Now, let's welcome the man who I think knew longer than any of us here, since 1935, is that right?
36.
36, Henry Foner.
Who's counting?
Hey!
It's 36, but who's counting?
Right.
I think my mom might have a lead. What year did you meet?
Steve already mentioned that one of the first things that happened to me as a student at City College, I entered in 1935, and early in my career, I heard the story about the fact that Morris was not going to be reappointed, and you would have been amazed at the demonstration that took place in Lincoln Corridor. Those of you who know City College know that Lincoln Corridor is the, it's now called, I think, Shepherd Hall, and the students sat down. Remember, this is the period of the sit-down strikes, and the students sat down in Lincoln Corridor and sat, and ultimately we were successful, and Morris was reappointed.
You're standing on the wire.
Oh, okay.
I got the others.
I got the other.
There you go.
You see how dangerous it is up here? Anyhow, just a word. Steve also mentioned that about the informers. One of the informers was a man by the name of William Canning. He was a member of the history department with my brothers Jack and Phil. And he didn't have a place to live, and our family took him in, and he lived at our house for about 2 or 3 years. And one of the things that my father was most angry about, he said, I paid for his glasses. That's the thing that he thought of most acutely.
The family made a mistake in taking him in.
Yeah, but the other thing was that we heard about one of the victims of the Rap-Couder committee. My brother Jack was kind of absent-minded. Oh yes, we heard about one of the former students that Morris had, but my brother Jack was once driving with my father, and he had forgotten his license, and a cop pulled him over. And my father, Jack said to my father very quickly, hand me your license. And my father gave him his license, and he gave it to the cop. And the cop looked at it and he said, Abraham Foner, are you related to Jack Foner? It turned out that it was one of Jack's former students. Those were the funny parts of the Rap-Couder. The more serious parts, of course, were the fact that it affected some of the finest teachers at the college. I don't have to tell you that they, you already heard from Steve that Moses Finley, who was originally Moses Finkelstein, and was one of the victims, went to England and was knighted, became Sir Moses Finley. Incidentally, came back here once to speak at a college commencement until he found out that Hague was being honored. And then he joined the picket line outside the commencement. And so we have, being a student at City College, of course, was a very exciting time at that time. There was I was part of a student movement, the American Student Union, and one of the songs that I wrote a parody to, some of you who were around may remember that there was a popular song called Yes, My Darling Daughter, in which a young lady asks her mother, may I go out dancing, and so on. And I took that and converted it into this. It went, Mother, may I go out? Oh no, that's the original. Mother, there's a new committee. Yes, my darling daughter, riding roughshod through the city. Yes, my darling daughter, they're out to smear our schools, Mama darling, with red herrings made to order. Do they think they're sitting pretty? Yes, my darling daughter, they're just reactions tools, Mama darling, out to cut the budget shorter. Shall we tell that to the city? Yes, my darling daughter. Oh, Mama, What if they should insist on third degrees, and our membership lists they try to seize in a manner illegal and improper? Just tell them that the vote belongs to Papa. Mother, here's the situation. Yes, my darling. Shall I keep up my education? Yes, my darling. Then I want your advice, Mama darling. Do you think I really ought to join the American Student Union? Yes, my darling daughter. A mention of the American Student Union brings me to one of the guests here. One of the first times that I heard Irwin Corey perform was at Pens and Pencils. Pens and Pencils was a kind of a takeoff on Pins and Needles, as you may remember, and it was a show put on by the American Student Union every year, and one of the performers that we were very proud of was Irwin Corey, who was here tonight with us. Irwin, who was called the world's foremost authority, would generally present his routine in the form of a lecture. And at the end of the lecture, he would ask, are there any questions? And he would plant somebody in the audience to ask, can you explain the theory of relativity? And he would say, yes. Are there any other questions? And we once met in Puerto Rico, my late wife Lorraine and Irwin and Fran, and we spent the day together, and then Irwin said, listen, I'm performing at the Flamboyant tonight, and when I get to the proper point, I'll call on you. And by the time he called on me, I had had 3 drinks. And so when he said, are there any questions? I said, what can you tell us about the theory of relativity? And he said, I gave you one line and you blew it. Well, it turned out that got a bigger laugh than the original. And then, of course, Irwin had, he was really, we did a book together, by the way. Irwin, there were pictures of Irwin that were taken by his sister-in-law, Ida Berman, and the captions that Norman Franklin and I wrote. And the book was called Sex, Its Origin and Application. And one of the lines at the end of his talk was a question period again. And somebody asked, should there be sex before the wedding? And his answer was, not if it delays the ceremony. And by coincidence, just a few days ago, I went up to Connecticut, where Norman Franklin is living in a senior residence, and they showed a video of a show that Norman and I wrote in 1947 called Thursdays Till 9. We wrote it for the Department Store Union, and they showed the video, and then Norman and I did a couple of songs from the show. So all of this takes place very conveniently within this same period. There's been mention made about Wright. Harry Wright was the president, actually. Steve, was he acting or president at that time?
Not here.
Oh, he's not here. Well, anyway, his name was Wright, and Norman Franklin took that and wrote this song to commemorate him. I've attended classes in logic, meeting in and out of season, and I've learned in time, in employing rhyme, to employ a little reason. My Prexy tells me my teachers still are academically free. With what's going on, Prexy's tripped upon a logical fallacy. I'll proceed to demonstrate accordingly. QED, if right is right, then wrong is right. Dark is bright and day is night. If right is right, no need to fight for logic or for knowledge. But if right is wrong, then wrong's still wrong. Reason triumphs in life and song. If right is wrong, our guys belong back in City College. Oh, how can you crush an ism when your own ism ain't got the jism to stand the test of the syllogism? If might made right, right might be right, but you can't make right from dynamite, which brings the logical end in sight. Right's emphatically, so fanatically, right is radically wrong. And then bringing it to Morris. Norman and I wrote a song about Morris at the time that he was in jail. Morris went to jail, by the way, while World War II was on. There was a weekend, the Teachers Union had a weekend up in Arrowhead Lodge, and we wrote this song to present at that weekend. It was called The Ballad of Morris Schappes, and it went like this. When I put on long breeches, Dad pulled his belt in 2-3 hitches, said, son, you still got far to go. Go along to City College, fill your noodle full of knowledge that in this world you'll need to know. Having learned my ABC, I got on to IRT, to 139th in Convent I did roam. There I learned cosines and logs, pulled apart a couple of frogs, and for 4 long years called alma mater home. I went to class in history, but it still remained a mystery why some was poor and some folks rich. When I asked the teacher why, he glared at me like fit to die and called me a good-for-nothing big young upstart. Then to Echo I did go, watched the business cycles grow, saw the 7 fat years swallowed by the lean. When I asked my teacher why, all he did was groan and sigh, said what's been has been, and having been has been. Then in despair I wandered to where literature was pondered, thought I'd find the long hairs mighty dry. I met a Larnin chap, his proud name, folks, was Morris Schappes. Now I praise the long hairs to the sky. There I heard no ifs or buts, saw this teacher full of guts, teaching stuff for which I'd gladly walk a mile. He made learning come alive and set me hep to Shelley's jive, and strange to say made words worthwhile. To guys like me those days meant so much that 'twas with amazement I learned that Schappes went to jail. If we let guys like Morris go down, then poor Freedom Star is gonna be glimmering awful pale. So you folks who know the score, realize that in this war we need guys like Schappes building unity. Now's the time, so let's not wait. Open wide that prison gate and set Schappes free to fight for victory. Those of you who were here heard that there was a round written by Elie Sigmeister at the time of the Rap Couder Committee, and it was written really about Brooklyn College at that time, and it was called Rap Couder.
A loving round.
A loving round. That's what I said.
Who is Harry D?
Harry D would have been probably the initials of Grabanier, the informer on them. His probably was Harry D. Grabanier, if I remember.
From Brooklyn College.
From Brooklyn College, yeah. There was the reason that the Brooklyn College people were not fired immediately, by the way, and not until the McCarran Committee came some years later, was because there was only one informer in Brooklyn College, and that was Grabanier. And I think his middle initial was D. I had another middle initial for him, but
What we ask is the third verse refers to Harry D.
Yeah, that must be Harry D. Grabanier. The other thing about, I just want to tell you about Brooklyn College, is that Brooklyn College had a president that you may remember
Harry Gideon.
named Gideons. And
That's
they
who
were-
it is. That's
Oh,
who
it
it
was
is.
Harry D. Gideon.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
Anyway, quickly, I just
What
have
did you say
to...
that?
Grabanier was Bernard.
Bernard.
Bernard
So this
Grabanier.
is
So this is Harry D. Gideon. And they had a song, What's Your Hurry, Mr. Gideons, Here's Your Hat. This was written when Gideons first came to the school. You are guilty, Mr. Gideon, self-confess, a flagrant disregard of our express request, charges rabid Robinsonian with a thin veneer of chromium. What a hell of a situation for a brand new administration. Better get going, Mr. Gideons. Here's your hat, and so on.
And they actually did call him doctor, even though he didn't have a doctorate. Is that accurate? That's what the song seems to say.
Well, if the song says it, it's got to be so.
I discovered this round in the Library of Congress in the L.E.C. Meister archive, and then, to my amazement, I discovered a man who knew it by heart already. That's Henry Foner.
By the way, Ellie Sigmeister, who wrote this, lived a block away from me in Borough Park, and Ellie, he was a remarkable musician, and he had a group that sang at Town Hall, and those of you who may remember, and they
American Ballad Singers.
The American Ballad Singers, and they did these wonderful songs, and one of them was called On Springfield Mountain. I did well,
Yeah, sure.
and I once went out to Springfield Gardens High School to recruit students for the fur design program at FIT, and I suggested that I could give them an alma mater song based on at Springfield Gardens. I did well, and so on and so on.
Sure.
Okay, so here
One of the songs that Ellie did with the American Ballad Singers was John Reed.
yes,
Written with Abel Maripol,
Uh-huh.
who later adopted the Rosenberg sons.
right.
That song was put in mothballs after 1947, and then 40 years later, for the John Reed Centennial, Corliss Lamont had Helene and me sing it. Helene sang and I accompanied it in a couple of places. That was actually the world premiere of it.
And then he gave birth to a nephew who defeated Dave Lieberman. So. Isn't that what's his nephew?
We're going to
Lamont.
Joe Lieberman in the primary. Unfortunately, not further, but.